Hello guys, my name is Duchoš History, and in today's part of the series about Czech kings, we are going to talk about Charles I of Austria. Make yourself comfortable and let's get started. Charles I of Austria. Charles I of Austria was the last emperor of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. His life and reign were marked by complex political and military events that affected Europe at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. In the video, we discuss Charles' life, youth, ascension to the throne, his role during the First World War, peace attempts, and finally his exile in Madeira. Youth and family background. Charles I was born on August 17 in 1887 in Pressburg Castle, in federal state of Lower Austria, today known as Slovakia, and Charles I was born in Bratislava. He came from a very ancient Habsburg dynasty that had a long history in European politics. His parents were Archduke Otto Franz of Austria and Princess Maria Josepha of Saxony. Charles had younger siblings, but his attention was turned to the future of the dynasty from a young age, as he was first in the line of succession. His younger brother Maximilian died in 1896 when he fell from a window, the tragic events that left a deep scar of Charles' mental health. As part of his upbringing, Charles was guided in military tradition. He received his basic education at the Theresianum in Vienna, a prestigious school, and later continued his military training at the military academy in Wiener Neustadt. This military experience had a significant influence on his character and later decision in the field of military strategy. Charles also had a close relationship with his parents. His father, Otto Franz, was the son of Emperor Francis Joseph I, and his mother, Maria Josepha, came from the Saxon Coburg dynasty. These family ties played a role in diplomacy and alliances in Europe, which was common among European royal families at the time. Charles' entire youth was strongly influenced by dynastic affairs, military education, and tragic events in the family. This combination of factors shaped his character and prepared him for the difficult challenges that awaited him during his later reign during the First World War. Ascension to the throne. After the death of Francis Joseph I in 1916, Charles became Emperor of Austro-Hungarian and King of Bohemia. At the time, the First World War was in full swing, and Charles took over the management of the country in an extremely difficult situation. Austria-Hungary faced the aligned war effort and growing national unrest within the empire. The First World War and peace attempts. The First World War began in 1914, and Austro-Hungarian was one of the Central European powers that was embroiled in the conflict. National and political tension were at their peak in the region, especially with Serbia. That situation led to the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in June 1914. This was the catalyst for the outbreak of war. However, no one could imagine what kind of war this conflict would lead to. After the assassination, Austro-Hungarian declared war on Serbia, which subsequently spread the conflict throughout the region. Gradually, other powers were involved in the war, until the conflict developed into a global conflict. When Emperor Francis Joseph died in 1916, Charles I ascended the throne of Austria-Hungary. His reign began at the time when the empire was at its peak of tension and crisis. Austro-Hungarian was struggling with the war, losses, economic problems, and increasing national disintegration within the empire. Charles I became emperor in a difficult period. After ascension to the throne, his first steps were focused on trying to find diplomatic solution to the war. He tried to weaken the influence of the warring circles in the government and started secret negotiation with opponents about a possible end to the conflict. In 1917, Charles I published the Manifesto for Universal Peace, in which he called for the final end to the war and transition to peace negotiations. He expressed his desire to unify monarchy and grant greater autonomy to national groups within the empire. However, this move met with resistance from allies and some members of his own government. Collapse of the monarchy and exile. National groups within the empire began to declare independence and form new states. This led to the rapid disintegration of the monarchy into several successor states. Czechoslovakia, Poland, Yugoslavia, and other newly formed states were formed on the territory that was once part of Austria-Hungary. Charles I became a symbol of the past, and his efforts to restore his position or at least maintain some form of central authority were unsuccessful. Charles I was forced to abdicate on 11th November in 1918, marking the significant end of the monarchy, although he never formally renounced his claim to the throne. A law was issued prohibiting the return of the Habsburg to the territory of the newly formed republics. After the abdication, Charles I decided on voluntary exile. He first went to Switzerland and then settled on the Portuguese islands of Madeira. He lived in exile with his wife Zita and their children. There he spent the rest of his life in isolation, far from political events and post-war turbulence. During his exile, Charles I tried to restore his position. He sent several requests to return to the political scene, but they were rejected. In 1921, he made an unsuccessful attempt to return to Vienna. However, these efforts met with resistance from the new republics, which refused to accept the former emperor. Legacy and beatification. Charles I was emperor at the time when the world was torn apart by the First World War. His efforts to find a way to peace through the Manifesto for Universal Peace and other diplomatic initiatives emphasized his desire to end the suffering of war. After unsuccessful attempts to restore the authority of the monarchy, which included an unsuccessful attempt to return to Vienna in 1921, Charles I was forced to abdicate. His attempts to restore the Habsburg Empire ended in failure due to political and social changes in the post-World War period. After the abdication, Charles I was sent into exile on the islands of Madeira. He lived here with his wife Zita and their children. Isolation in exile prevented him from having any significant influence on world events or politics. In 2004, Charles I was beatified by the Catholic Church by Pope John Paul II. The beatification took place during a solemn ceremony in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. In St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. The reason for the beatification were linked to Charles' efforts for peace during times of war and his attempted humanitarian acts. Pope John Paul II emphasized Charles' interest in peace, human rights and social justice. This put Charles I among the Christian role models who, in the times of trouble, showed an effort for peace and charity. The beatification was seen as recognition of his commitment to humanitarian and peace efforts during difficult periods. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, I will be very happy if you give me a like and subscribe. This is my goodbye and I wish you a nice rest of the day and see you in my next videos.